Welcome to Talkin Bengals, Bengals site made by the fans for the fans. Check out Talkin Bengals on iTunes, Google Play, Buzzsprout, and follow Talkin Bengals on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Now, let's join the conversation. Hello and welcome to Talkin Bengals, episode 31. This is our first podcast of the season that's actually about a real game, a game that was to watch. Nick, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right, Casey. How you been doing this week?
Not too bad. I mean, I could have been better. Sunday was just an absolutely abysmal, miserable experience, just unbelievably painful. That is not what anybody expected, I think. 20-0. I mean, I think last week in the predictions, you had a low scoring 23-17, and yeah, neither one of us were really close on that one. And there was just so many issues. I don't even know where to start on this one. I guess we'll just the offense was the biggest one. I thought the defense did okay. I mean, they could have played, better, shut down those long drives, but they didn't really give up a whole lot of points except for when, Baltimore started within the 3-yard line. But so let's get to the first topic of what's the blame here. Andy Dalton, the elephant in the room. Nick, what you got for Andy Dalton?
I mean, when you throw 4 picks as an NFL quarterback, that's unacceptable. I mean, that's just absolutely terrible. Now, you can't really take into effect that every pick was 100% totally and all his fault, but, I mean, he's the one making the decision to throw where he's throwing. And unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to actually physically watch the game. I had to listen to it on the radio. But to tell you the truth, man, I was extremely disappointed in his performance. I thought Dalton was going to have a lot better year this year. But, I mean, we'll just stay on the topic of Andy Dalton, Casey. I'll let you tear into it.
Well, I mean, the whole game started off bad there with LaFell getting the false start. But as far as Dalton, he never looked comfortable. You would never know he's a 3-time Pro Bowl quarterback, a guy who's been in the league this is his 7th year. You'd never guess that. He just played, like he was scared, and he was making terrible decisions. I mean, the first interception, I'm like, all right, here we go. The drive's getting going. The offense is in gear. Things are going to start clicking. And he threw the ball underthrown by at least a good 2 or 3 feet to where the defender could get his hands on it. And A.J. Green was wide open. He was right in between the zone. Like he had beat the zone. And he just threw it too low. The defender tips it and it gets intercepted. And I was like, okay, you know what? That's just bad luck. It happens. No big deal. The Ravens scored. The Bengals started driving down the field. Made a great drive. Started deep in their own territory. And they just drive it all the way down. And Dalton throws into double coverage. And everybody's going to blame the line. I know some we'll get into here in a little while. But those 2 interceptions were not the line's fault. He had enough time to throw. You're not going to get, 10 seconds every time you have the ball to make an effective decision. You have to make a decision and go. And throwing into double coverage, throwing the ball too low, that's just inexcusable. I mean, even the 3rd interception, they're backed up deep in their own territory. Baltimore was up 10-0. And you know what? Okay, not a great situation. You want to get some points before halftime. I get that. But he made the mistake, he's flushed up in the pocket, and he just throws it right into Terrell Suggs. You know better than that. Take the sack. I mean, it's not happy, but deal with it.
Oh, I agree, dude. Completely agree, especially on that 3rd interception. I mean, when you throw the ball right into the defender's hands, I mean, what can the rest of your team do when you're doing something like that? I mean, yeah, having a sack is awful. It stinks, but at the same time, it's better than giving up an interception and pretty much just giving a score away. I mean, it's almost a guarantee at that point that the other team's going to have, at least 3 points, if not 7, by the time the drive's over with. And Andy Dalton making poor decisions during the throws, I mean, he's effectively, degrading the defense. No matter how good they are, they're going to be exhausted by the time, the end of the 3rd quarter going into the 4th quarter. I mean, they don't have time to rest. I mean, if you don't keep your defense off the field to rest, your defense isn't going to be able to perform as well as they need to because, quite frankly, they're always out on the field.
Yeah, I mean, he's getting the defense exhausted. And I mean, the last interception was more of the same, just bad decision, terrible ball placement. I mean, A.J. Green had absolutely no play, threw into basically double coverage. But the other thing that got me is, after halftime, Nick Vigil gets an interception. It's like, all right, we're only down, 17-0. We got the ball back quick, good field position. We can at least come away with a field goal, only be down by 2 scores. And Dalton can't make it happen. I know everybody's going to say, oh, it's not his fault. He could strip from behind. Well, it is his fault. He's the quarterback. You don't see Aaron Rodgers making those mistakes. You don't see Tom Brady making those mistakes. If you want to be a quarterback in the NFL, you have to be able to step up. And this Cincinnati fan base is not going to, be okay with taking 5 steps backwards this season. That's not okay. Last year was the step back. We need to start stepping forward again. I'm so tired of, hearing rebuilding. It's not rebuilding. This is our time. This team needs to make it work with what you got. Rebuilding is a cop-out. And Andy Dalton, if he can't step up and rebound and play the way that he's played in other points of his career, it's too early to say this probably, but why not give A.J. McCarron a shot? If Andy Dalton, this is how good he's going to play the rest of the year, then why not give A.J. McCarron a shot? But I think, historically, if you look at Dalton, after he has really bad games, he has really good games. That's why Thursday night's going to be a very telling tale for him. If he comes out and lays another egg and, just has a terrible, pitiful game, maybe this is it for Andy Dalton. I mean, you have enough weapons. I get it. Your offensive line's not great, which we're getting ready to get into. But you got to make it happen. You're the guy. You are the quarterback. And I said it before the season started. I said this season hinges on 2 people, and that's Andy Dalton and Marvin Lewis. And right now, neither one of them impressed me very much. Nick, you got any other thoughts on Andy Dalton?
I mean, I think we've pretty much covered it. I agree with you. I think we should give A.J. McCarron a shot if Dalton comes back tomorrow night and lays another egg. I mean, how late do you want to get into the season before you start giving your absolutely, I can't think of the word, the guy who's more than qualified as a backup to come in and play. I mean, every time A.J. McCarron has came in to a game when Andy Dalton came out, last year with the thumb injury and in years prior when, McCarron was there. I mean, he didn't do half bad considering the little amount of experience he's had in the pros. But I mean, he shows signs of being able to be an adequate, professional quarterback. Why not give him a chance if Dalton comes out and throw an egg again?
I mean, I agree. So let's get into the other topic that, everybody's going to – the group that's getting blamed the most by, all the overly optimistic people or the people who don't think that a quarterback should just make things happen, and that's the offensive line. But I want to caveat that to all these offensive line haters. Yes, they were terrible on Sunday, but we knew they were going to be terrible. Pretty much this entire offseason, we had talked about that. After Whitworth and Zeitler were gone, you knew the offensive line was going to be a big concern. So why does it shock you how badly they played? That's not what – I mean, yes, I was unhappy. It's not that I'm wanting them to give up sacks or, make Andy Dalton run for his life. But we knew they were going to be bad. We knew they were not going to be, the great line of 2015 or, great Bengals lines of years past. But they just didn't even try, it looked like. But that brings me to the point. So, I mean, Nick, you got any thoughts on the line before I move into the next subject?
I mean, the offensive line is, quite frankly, the backbone to the offense. I mean, you can have Brett Favre, and you can have Peyton Manning. I mean, you name any great quarterbacks. I mean, they had at least a halfway decent line to block for them. When you don't have a halfway decent line to block for you, it doesn't matter how good the quarterback is because the quarterback's not going to be able to make a good, sound decision because he's not going to have enough time to. He's always going to be thinking, where am I going to escape to not get my head torn off? So, I mean, the offensive line definitely has a lot to work on.
Well, I mean, so that makes me think, yeah, the offensive line's not very good. They got to improve. Got it. But who's ultimately responsible to put a team that can produce and that can play, and you have to adapt to what you have? And that falls on the coaching staff. Falls on Marvin Lewis, Ken Zampese. They got to make this thing happen. This is the tools that you've been given to work with. You have to find a way to be successful. You can't say, well, if we had a better, left tackle, if we had a better center, if we had a better this, that, or whatever. This is what you have. And you have weapons that most of the league would beg to have. You have the fastest guy to ever run at the combine. You have one of the best, if not the best, wide receivers in the league. You have all the running backs played pretty well on Sunday. Giovanni Bernard was playing back to form. Joe Mixon's going to get more reps and play better. Even Jeremy Hill is having a lot of yards per carry. So you have weapons. You have lots and lots of weapons. Utilize them. You know what's made the Patriots successful for so many years? Not that I'm a Patriots fan by any means, but I can respect them. It's the fact that they make do with what they have. Everybody's going to say, oh, they have Tom Brady. Well, yeah, that's great. Having Tom Brady is awesome. But look when Tom Brady's out. They're still successful. Belichick and his coaching staff, and there's, Ferris wheel, carousel or Ferris wheel, whichever one I'm trying to say here, of assistant coaches. You just improvise, you adapt, and you overcome. That has been Belichick's mantra. That's what he does. Okay, I lost my offensive coordinator. Here's a new offensive coordinator. This is what we're going to do. Brady goes down. We have this backup nobody's ever heard of. This is how we're going to be successful. This is how we're going to win. It is on the coaching staff, and especially the head coach, to figure out what you have available, what they can do effectively, and exploiting that. Exploit what your team and what your players can do. You can't have this same strategy that we're going to run this many times, we're going to try to pass this many times, if you don't have the people that'll make it happen. You have to find what your team is going to be effective at and make sure that happens. Nick?
I agree with you, man. I mean, what's the point of having a head coach if the head coach isn't going to be a leader? I mean, you look at Belichick, you look at all the successful head coaches. I mean, Mike Ditka, for God's sakes. You're looking at guys who were leaders. They went out and their team looked at them for, what are we going to do next, boss? It's the same as having anybody else in a leadership role or in a management position. I mean, that manager, that boss, that leader has to have a plan and stick to the plan. And if that plan doesn't work out, you got to have a backup. You always have contingency plans. I mean, that's what winners do. Winners always have a contingency plan. And it seems like Marvin Lewis, once one thing goes bad, he's got nothing else. And it's been the same story however long he's been coaching for us. Yeah, he might have been a good whatever coach before he got here, and he might have pulled us out of the bungle years, the 2 and 14s or whatever. But that was also play. Now we have players who have all the talent in the world. AJ Green, John Ross, Joe Mixon, Hill, Gio. I mean, and we have a decent defense, but you have horrible coaching, horrible play calling. You have people playing positions that they're not comfortable with. Especially on the offensive line. I mean, you have a guy brought in as an offensive guard playing tackle. And most people, when they look at an offensive lineman and they say, what's the difference between a guard and a tackle? I mean, that's a huge difference. That's a huge different type of blocking. Just for example, when you're a guard, you're used to pulling, you're used to having an outside help, you're used to having inside help with the center. You're used to having, blitz help up the middle, with a running back, to cut the block. As a tackle, you're pretty much on your own. You're picking up the first guy that comes to you. It's a totally different kind of blocking, and it's totally different preparation for the game. And we have coaches putting people in positions they're not comfortable playing, and it's abundantly clear, especially with the way that they've been blocking. And I think the coaches, they need to step in and say, hey, look, hey, Marvin, we probably need to change something up here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about it, actually. Marvin Lewis has been here since 2003. He's the second longest tenured head coach in the NFL. But honestly, what impact has he made? What is his legacy on the NFL? Now, the Bengals, yes, he is going to always have a spot in Bengals history. I'm not saying he does not, 7 playoff appearances, unfortunately, no playoff wins. What, 5 division titles at this point, or 4 division titles at this point? I'm pretty sure. I have to do the math thing. I might be missing one, but at least 4 division titles. But what's his impact on the league? So Bengals history, yeah, he's going down in it. But if he stopped coaching tomorrow, never coached again, in 20 years, 30 years, is anybody going to remember him for anything? Is he going to be on NFL films, for the Super Bowl recap? No, because he's never been to one. Think of how many coaches that even if, they lost the Super Bowl, they're shown every Saturday before the Super Bowl, and they show every Super Bowl from the beginning to now. So they'll at least have some kind of place. But what place does Marvin Lewis have? Never won a playoff game. Can't get his team to produce in the clutch. Terrible record in primetime games. So he took the Bengals from being a laughingstock for losing all the games to being a laughingstock for losing playoff games and primetime games. You know what? You get that guy who's going to get you out of the cellar. Great. We need a guy who's going to get us to the next level. We need a coach who can get the Bengals out of being mediocre, out of being, we can win the regular season, can't win in the postseason, can't win in primetime games. They need some new leadership. They need some new guidance. And if, like I said, Dalton doesn't get any better, they're going to need a new quarterback. But I don't know. I'm just frustrated. That was not the way I expected last Sunday to go. And that's not what the city expected. I mean, the fans is something big to talk about there. I mean, the attendance was not good. It was not a sold-out game, and I think that reflects the fact that, maybe there's not a lot of faith in this team right now, and rightly so after week 1. But the ticket prices are ridiculous, and you're not putting a product on the field that is making people want to come and watch it. But, the fans right now, they were booing. Someone threw a beer bottle at the end of the game toward Andy Dalton and just all kinds of stuff. And I mean, but are the fans wrong? Should they be that disgruntled? Nick, what do you think?
I think the fans have a right to be that disgruntled. I mean, when Paul Brown came to Cincinnati and started coaching and taking over, I mean, he had a winning team. He had a team that was exciting to watch. I mean, through the 80s, had a team that was fun to watch. I mean, our last playoff win was not in my memorable lifetime, and I'm 28. That's a long time. Hell, I mean, you look at teams like the Chargers, the Raiders. I mean, you're looking at teams that they're not consistently good, but they still at least have a playoff win. I mean, that I can remember. We don't even have one. We've been to, you said the playoffs, 7 times since 03? Every time we found a way to lose. I mean, like you were saying, Marvin Lewis, what's his, what is he going to be remembered for? He's going to be remembered for losing primetime games. He's going to be remembered for finding ways to lose any kind of a big game that, his team ever went into. And honestly, Cincinnati, everybody who's a Cincinnati fan, you don't get used to it. You don't get used to just losing. And Cincinnati fans, they're getting really angry. They're getting really teased. They're getting all this buildup, all this hype about how good this team's going to be, or how good how good this team was going to be. All this hype around all this stuff. It's like they find ways to lose. And quite frankly, if Marvin Lewis doesn't find a way to do it this year and he stays, Cincinnati may not have very many fans next year.
No, I agree with you totally on that. And I mean, that brings us in. Let's look at tomorrow night's matchup. Going to play Houston at home in a Thursday night primetime game. And this is the battle of, two of the worst teams from week one. I mean, Houston got embarrassed by the Jaguars, which is pretty much maybe a little bit worse than getting embarrassed by the Ravens, except for Joe Flacco couldn't throw a ball over 20 yards. They lost Danny Woodhead. They lost, I forget who on their defensive line. But, yeah, so I'm not sure who is more pathetic, us losing to Baltimore 20-0 or the Texans losing to the Jaguars 29-7. I mean, it's just battle of pathetics there. Not good at all. So you have two bad football teams from week one playing each other in prime time on Thursday night in week two. And I don't know. I mean, this is one of these two teams is going to be 1-1 at the end of this, and one of them is going to be 0-2. Just makes you wonder who's going to be that 0-2 team. And if it's the Bengals, 0-3. Not that I'm trying to jump ahead too far, but if you lose to the Ravens when they're diminished and don't have all their weapons and Flacco can't throw the ball, to the Texans when they got embarrassed by the Jaguars the week before, how are you going to beat Green Bay in Green Bay? That boggles the minds. I mean, things to watch this week, is going to be how does the offense come back? The team in general, how does the old team come back? But what is the offense going to do differently to prove us wrong? To get this, I mean, I feel like, we're at a funeral right now, the way we've been talking this entire podcast. There's not been any laughing. There's not been any, joking. There's not been anything. Seems like you've just sucked, not you, but the world has just sucked the air out of us, and we're just miserable already, like we're 0-8. But that's just how that loss felt. I mean, it was just horrible. So we got to maybe think a little bit positive here, try to be optimistic. So, Nick, what are you going to be looking for tomorrow night?
I'm going to be looking for an improvement in the offensive line, and I'm going to build on that improvement for the offensive line. I'm looking for an improvement in Andy Dalton. Like you said earlier in the podcast, Dalton usually does come back after a terrible game and have a really good game. We'll have to see, but like I was saying, in other podcasts, Dalton has to learn how to hit other targets other than just AJ Green. I mean, is a viable target.
I don't know. I'd be happy if he could even hit
Brandon
it.
I agree. I'd be happy if he could hit him. But, I mean, he's going to have to look at other targets. I mean, you have at least 4 good, viable targets. Every time he drops back and throws the ball. I mean, you have 2 guys that can beat any cornerback in the league. You have Tyler Eifert, who can outmuscle pretty much everybody on the field. And I've got the experience to know how to get into the gaps in the defense. I mean, looking at my big look forward to is to see Andy Dalton hit other targets other than AJ Green if he can actually complete a pass. Defensively, what I'm looking for is pretty much 3 and outs. How many 3 and outs can the Bengals get? And to get a couple turnovers. These are fumble recoveries, and they're not, and no pick sixes, just interception. 3 and outs and turnovers is what we're really looking for in the defense, because the defense needs to stay off the field. Quite honestly, the offense needs to control the pace of the game. I mean, you know what you're going to get from Huber. Every time Huber needs to punt, he goes and he does his job. I mean, Bullock didn't even get a chance to even show why he made the team. He didn't even get a chance to kick. And to build off what's more embarrassing, losing to the Jaguars, or losing to the Ravens. I think the Bengals got more embarrassed because they got shut out at home. At least the Texans, they scored. I don't know how they scored, but at least they scored. They got on the board. The Bengals haven't even scored a point this year. So, I don't know. It's bad juju going into the second game and not having scored. So, I think getting shutouts worse. Casey, what are you looking for?
Well, definitely looking for the offense to figure out how to score points. The first team offense didn't score a lot of points in the preseason, and Dalton had that interception in the first game on that first drive that looked pretty good. And after the first game of the regular season, Dalton's thrown a lot more interceptions, and the team has not really looked any better. But tomorrow night, I'm expecting somebody on offense to just step up. And maybe I'm a little bit ahead of the curve here or, trying to think wishfully. I think Joe Mixon's going to put the running game on his back tomorrow night. I feel like, he didn't like how he performed in week one. He didn't have, he was probably the weakest running back showing of it between him, Jeremy Hill, and Giovanni Bernard. So I think he's going to come out tomorrow night with a chip on his shoulder. He's going to want to prove something. And to be honest with you, he's the running back out of all of them that, he can make people miss. He can make a hole where there is no hole. He can out-juke people. He can outrun people. He's extremely fast. He's going to put this team on his back tomorrow night. And then as far as, getting open, A.J. Green's going to be so wide open, Andy Dalton won't be able to miss him. He's just going to find a way to get open. And, like I said, if Andy Dalton keeps throwing interceptions, then there's your problem right there, and it's time to find a new quarterback. I think Mixon's going to put this team on his back, and A.J. Green is going to step up and get open. Now, if Dalton hits him or not, that's on Andy Dalton to see if he puts his head back in the game, which is something I'm going to be very interested to see because I don't think – in 3-day or 4-day turnaround that your offensive line is going to go from a D- to a A+. There's just no way. So the offensive line play is not going to be that much better. But you're playing against another team that, to my opinion, is subpar, definitely a subpar defense except for one or two players. And so just got to see what Andy Dalton can do to overcome the problems. And like you said, the defense, the biggest key there is get off the field. Don't give up a lot of points. Yeah, great. But get off the field so the other team can't run out the clock, take away all of your time possession to make it impossible for you to come back. Well, that's going to pretty much bring us down to our predictions / final thoughts. And, Nick, I'll let you go first this week.
Well, my predictions, I'm not going to have the Bengals scoring a whole lot because, A, it's prime time, and I don't a lot prime time. I'm going to try to be optimistic, say Bengals 10-7. So the Bengals win 10-7. But, yeah. Final thoughts. I'll go into final thoughts and let you do your predictions and final thoughts. What I'm looking for this week is just simply the team to come together and play as a team. I agree with Casey on the Joe Mixon part. Joe Mixon's got to get the ball more often. I mean, he's the guy that he creates holes, like Casey said. He makes people miss, like you said, Case. I mean, Gio, he's got, some speed, but he's not going to miss. He doesn't have the size. Jeremy Hill's an up and down running back, but sometimes he goes side to side and loses yards because of it. But Joe Mixon's the entire package. I mean, he's Gio and Hill all together, and that's what you need in a running back. That's what you need in your number one running back. And quite frankly, not giving him the ball as often would hurt the team, especially with not having, a very good offensive line. So my final thoughts is I hope that the offensive line goes from that D-, what Casey was talking about, to at least a B-. B as in boy. I think if the line makes at least a B- improvement, you're going to see a huge turnaround in the type of play of Andy Dalton, huge turnaround type of play from the running backs, because we're going to be able to move the ball and control the time. And, quite frankly, we'll be able to control the pace of the game. So offensive line, B-, hopefully. Bengals 10-7.
Ooh, prediction. I've had about 5 different scores popping in my head. 2 of them have been Houston winning, 3 of them have been Cincinnati winning. So going with Cincinnati winning. And I think you're going to see a little bit more scoring than what you think, but it's going to be 16-13 Bengals. I think Randy Bullock's going to make a couple clutch kicks. And, There you go. Bengals 16-13. I don't think it's going to be a very exciting Thursday night game. You know, the primetime crowd probably not going to stay watching for very long because it would be pretty boring. But, you know, if the Bengals come away with a win, that just sets the foundation. You know, I don't expect this to be great. I mean, now would it be awesome to have Andy Dalton come out and throw 5 touchdown passes, you know, just be on fire? Like, yeah, that'd be great. I'm not expecting it, though. My final thoughts kind of go along the lines of yours. I want to just see people step up. I want to see these young players step up. I want to see the veterans be leaders, do what they've done before, and do what needs to happen for this team to be successful. So, you know, tomorrow night, NFL Network, I'm going to be plugged in watching that one, so it should be a good time. So that's going to wrap it up for us this week on Talking Bengals. Check us out on iTunes, Google Play, and Buzzsprout. Follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at Talking Bengals. And hopefully next week we have a bigger and louder hooday.
Hooday.